And who in here do we want to go?
Yes, sir.
And we want to show them that never again will they ever disrespect the black community. We must make them afraid to do evil to us and think they can get away with it.
You fill Yankee Stadium.
I never was in Yankee Stadium.
I thought you appeared in Yankee Stadium.
No, sir.
Well, which stadium? Which stadium am I confused? You certainly brought
Randall's Island.
But in other cities, is with thousands and thousands of people.
Yes.
Come to hear you speak. And I think I understand why. You speak to their anger. And you know, it's not possible to argue against the anger. Let's look at just a couple of things. Unemployment rate. This is July of this year. Whites 5.3%, Hispanics 7.6%, almost 10%, 10% of black folks. And these numbers, you know, we all know there's a lot more than that. Unemployed. How about the jails? 2 million people in jail. For every 100,000 people in prison, 3,500 are black, 1,100 Hispanic, and 462 are white. When I hear you speak to these injustices, to these, you know, racial profiling, New Jersey state troopers, honestly, I think if I were a black male, I'd be at Randall's Island listening to you speak. I would. And the political power that you have is undeniable. But you make it tough on the white reporters. I mean, how, you know, it's with all this history of this kind of rhetoric, it's awful tough to say, hey, Minister Farrakhan, sit down and tell us how horrible we are. We have to challenge you as you would challenge us. This isn't a game. This is a matter of the respect that we want to have as professionals. You can't get up there and talk like that as a man of God, using language like you do. So I'm asking for some understanding here. You bring this on yourself.
Sir, if I took the New Testament and took Jesus, the greatest human being in the eyes of Christians that ever lived, I could take Jesus with the scriptures and give him a sound bite and make him look anti-Semitic? Because there's a statement that Jesus made in St. John 8:44 where he condemns Jews. If you pull that out, put that up on the screen tonight, they'd be saying Jesus anti-Semite. When Jesus beat the people in the temple, all we need is a 30-second bite on Donahue or CBS or CNN, and they'd say, look at that enraged maniac, how he beat those people out of the temple. You could accuse Jesus of teaching hate, for Jesus said in the gospel, you can't be my disciple unless you hate your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, yea, even your own life for my sake. Take that out of context. Jesus is a hate teacher. Another thing, take Jesus out of context. He's a man of peace, but he said, think not that I come to bring peace, nay, a sword. So if this media were listening to Jesus like you all listen to me, to snatch things out of context, to deliberately make me look other than what I really am. That is my argument with the press, and that's my argument with you tonight. In fact, I'm really surprised at you, because I thought Donahue, a great man. We missed you when you got your hiatus.
Well, thank you, Minister.
But coming back, this country needs people that will bring out of those who are talking the real issues behind their words. That's the kind of man you are, and that's the kind of man I want you to be, so that your program won't diminish over time, but will grow.
Let's talk about reparations. This is the reparations rally a week ago Sunday. And I want to give you a chance to, we've already established that this was a
very, very discouraging turnout. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, but it certainly means that the excitement and the energy that we knew at, for example, the Million Man March was not there at all. But
we were no part
of
the organization of this march, but we are definitely a part of the idea that the damage that was done to black people has to have a hearing and reparations. If the Japanese Americans could get reparations for their suffering, and even the Italians and the German Americans during World War II suffered injustice, and the Chinese Americans, as the rise of Mao Zedong and communism in that part of the world, suffered injustice in the hands of the government of the United States of America. All the while that was going on, black people have suffered in this country. And the sad part about it, Mr. Donahue, is that our government would not send a high-level representative to Durban, South Africa, to talk on racism and the effect of the international transatlantic slave trade. Here's 400,000 black men and women in the armed forces of America that President Bush is willing to send to Iraq, but the president nor his administration have apologized for slavery, nor will they speak forthrightly against racial profiling. I don't think we have a fight in Iraq. I think our fight is to make America a better nation for all of us to live in. And I don't think that the war, beating the war drum for Iraq, is going to solve the problems that create the crisis of confidence in the American electorate.
Nicole from Florida, are you there?
Yes.
You wanted to ask Minister Farrakhan.
Minister Farrakhan, why is it that you feel descendants of former slave owners need to pay for their forefathers' crimes when they have not committed crimes themselves?
You know, thank you for the question. I watched the trial of O.J. Simpson, and he won in the criminal court, and they found him not guilty, but they tried him again, and they found him responsible. The present generation of whites is absolutely not guilty of what was done by generations of whites hundreds of years ago. But I think the present generation of whites have to accept the responsibility to right the wrong, because the wrong that was done 400 years ago, is the effect of it is still seen in the black community today. Who will accept the responsibility, live up to the challenge, and make America a better America, not just for whites, but for blacks and Native Americans, Hispanics, and poor people? That is the responsibility of the present generation of whites. And I would hope that if you accept this responsibility, that the guilt of what happened by the fathers, the sins of that will not be passed on to the children.
And we'll be back in just a moment.
If the man is telling the truth about what he said, whether it is critical of you, critical of me, critical of our people, critical of a government, critical of America, critical of Jews, critical of Christians, critical of Muslims, I have the right to say what I believe, and you have the right to record what I say as I say it, and don't mix it up.
I agree with all of that. You have a right to say what you believe, as you have. Incidentally, regarding reparations, present-day black folks would make their contribution to these reparations through their taxes. So black folks, tax money would be going to pay black folks reparations. And one of the criticisms of this reparations idea is that you can't separate black and white taxes. It's impossible.
Yeah, well, you ask the Japanese Americans who pay taxes.
For the Japanese brothers, you mean?
How are their reparations going to be paid? You ask the Jews who suffered in Germany, how are their reparations paid, because I believe they pay taxes as well. We're not just talking about money, because there's an old saying that a fool and his money will soon part. The Bible says, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. There has to be a transfer of knowledge that would allow the black man and woman of America to heal from the condition imposed by 300 years of chattel slavery and 140 years of living under injustice. That has to be repaired. Not just money, but a transfer of knowledge. We need to talk about land. We need to talk about how we're going to build a future for our people. You just mentioned prison statistics and the injustice of it. You know, 20 years ago, Phil, when the business community began to move out of the inner cities because they felt that the inner cities would explode in racial unrest, when those businesses moved out and moved into foreign countries to give those jobs to a cheap labor market, many blacks and Hispanics in the inner cities lost their jobs, went on welfare, or began selling drugs or involving themselves in criminal enterprise or joining the armed forces of the United States so that they could make a living to feed their families. This is why there's such an imbalance in the prison population, because job opportunities are not there, and we have not been sufficiently taught how to use our knowledge to do something constructive for ourselves. And that's the value of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Sharon in California. Sharon.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
I love you, Minister Farrakhan.
Thank you.
My question to you is, in the Nation of Islam, are you endorsing the registration of mixed couples, for instance, African-American brothers with Caucasian women, and vice versa?
Thank you. We have never approved of interracial marriage. We feel that the black woman is a suffering woman with very few men to link herself to. So we don't want to see our black men necessarily marrying white women or white men marrying black women. However, we cannot legislate love. When people fall in love, what can you do about that? But the rule is that whites generally marry whites, Chinese generally marry Chinese, Indians generally marry Indians, and blacks generally marry our own. But if there's a couple that are in love with each other and marry, we do not try to separate them.
Your marriage is how old? How long has your marriage in a vital way proceeded?
49 years. Next year will be 50 years.
You have 9 children.
9 children and about 40 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren.
And how's your health?
My health is good, as you
Grandpa's
can see.
health is good?
Grandpa's health is good.
You had serious bout with prostate cancer.
That's correct.
And you went to the Cobalt and you had that new treatment, and it works for you, does it?
I think it's a form of treatment that I would recommend if the cancer has not gone too far. Seed implantation. I think Mayor Giuliani had that treatment, and he seems to be doing quite well.
We are in Secaucus, New Jersey, talking with Louis Farrakhan, the leader of the Nation of Islam. Kim from California, you're there?
Yes.
You wanted to say.
You've been accused of accepting financial assistance from Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Can you please explain your relationship with Gaddafi and these financial allegations?
They're not allegations, they're truth. Muammar Gaddafi loaned the Nation of Islam $5 million for an economic development plan. And I have a very good relationship with Muammar Gaddafi. We are friends, we are brothers. And he has great respect for me and I for him. In fact, I have great love and admiration for him. And I'm very grateful to Almighty God for his snatching the idea of a United States of Africa from Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah and Gamal Abdel Nasser, which resulted just recently in the formation of the African Union.
And we'll be back in just a moment. I'm thinking of the loved ones of Pan Am 103 who are watching you embrace Gaddafi. You don't think he's responsible for that? I mean, you couldn't. You wouldn't embrace him if you thought he was.
No, I don't believe he's responsible for that. But the United States shot down an Iranian jet with nearly 300 persons on that. There's been a lot of terrible tragedy in this world.
Right.
And now we're living at a time when we have to atone for the things that we've done that are ill and wrong, so that we can make a better world for ourselves and our children to live in.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope.
I do too. I do too. That's what makes your pattern of rhetoric and accusations that you're being taken out of context so hard to deal with when we think of what a healer you could be. What a healer. Michael from Florida.
What a healer I am.
Michael,
Hi.
go ahead.
My question is for Mr. Farrakhan. Yes. My question is, why does he feel that he is such a good American and talks about portraying good Americans when he has such close ties to foreign evils that are against us?
Close ties, I assume.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
You know, a good American, I'm sure, are those that love their country and wave the flag. But to me, the best Americans are those who fight for those principles upon which the United States was founded. Martin Luther King Jr. at one time was looked upon as a divisive force in this country. But Martin Luther King said he was a drum major for justice. And it is only justice that will make America have the perpetuity that America should have. And so it is voices like mine, unafraid to speak truth to power. And I say this to the American people. You need to rise today and let the president know that unless he makes the case for war, America should never be the aggressor and attack a nation that cannot really defend itself against the power of the greatest military power in the history of the world. That's what makes me a good American. I use freedom of speech responsibly to correct a government that I feel has gone wrong. All of you should speak up. If not, I'll be glad to speak for you.
You've gotten, the Nation of Islam has received high marks for the young men who accompany you. Boy, they just look military, bearing, clear of eye, drug-free, each and every one. Wonderful message. You've cleaned out public housing projects and protected young children from the evils of drugs. And do you get any federal money helping you do this?
We did at one time, but we're under sanctions now because they say we're anti-Semitic. I can say on this program, Phil, I have never been, nor am I now, a hater of the Jewish people. What I dislike is injustice. And when I speak to that and speak critically of those Jewish persons who I feel are unjust to us, I feel it's criminal to call me anti-Semitic. Well, that I am not.
Yeah, I don't know. You don't bring up the Christians as much as you bring up the Jews. Incidentally, regarding, I don't see, my president has already said, I don't see how we can allow public dollars to fund programs where spite and hate is the core of the message. That's what I'm trying to say. You don't need all this spite and hate. And let me accept your word that it's not true. Well, you're giving the appearance that it's true. Louis Farrakhan preaches hate. Louis Farrakhan is a hateful person who has preached an anti-Semitic message, which is ugly.
George W. Bush is preaching hate every time he stands on the television telling us that Saddam Hussein is a threat. Saddam Hussein didn't cause Enron and World.com. He didn't call the crisis of confidence. He's not responsible for police brutality and mob attacks and hate crimes in America. No, Mr. President, you're preaching hate, and you need to stop it.
Louis Farrakhan.